Now, introduced in various of these lectures in these 3-day conference was little snippets of how does this actually take place. And this is the first time I have seen or been able to create a list of the mechanism by which this reaction can take place. Number 1, molecular mimicry. Strep viridans, the Streptococcus bacteria, has an amino acid sequence. Now, when we send material down to the lab, and if any of you watch any of those CSI movies, you know, the crime movies, they go to the crime scene and they don't know what this substance is. They send it down to the lab, and you know, an hour later or 6 hours later, they get a report that tells them what it is, because the machine can identify the frequencies and of that material. So these amino acid free order or sequence has been identified in bacteria, in our own genomes, and lo and behold, there is overlap between a strep viridans streptococcal infection and the myelin sheath around the nerves. So what happens is the body identifies the strep viridans as the enemy, mounts a response, but it overgeneralizes and finds the myelin sheath in the brain as the enemy, starts to attack it, break it down, and then we have what we call MS, or multiple sclerosis. Molecular mimicry. It looks so close to human tissue. A virus, a bacteria, something that's entered the body that the body overgeneralizes and starts to attack itself. Thymus dysfunction, where that T cell has been sent from the bone marrow to the thymus, and there's been some of those T cells that have been formed against self-tissue, but the thymus says, hey, your education wasn't right. We will not permit this cell to leave the thymus. You will be staying here because you got miseducated. And it kills all those cells and only releases the cells that are out there to fight that virus, that new virus that just got it imposed on the body. So the thymus dysfunction. Estrogen receptor overstimulation. Here's the reason why women have it more than men. Women have more estrogen receptors in their body. We are exposed to fake estrogens in the environment and with birth control pills. The pills that standard medicine has been using for years, birth control pills, they've called it HRT, hormone replacement therapy. Fake estrogens stimulating estrogen receptors. We have bisphenols in the plastics, fake estrogens. We have xenoestrogens in the environment. Some of the smoke that's coming from the industrial plants has xenoestrogens, has things that look like estrogen, get on the estrogen receptor and overstimulates it. And if you get the bisphenol and phthalate levels from men and women, women have 4 times more bisphenol levels compared to men. And bisphenol is an estrogen, a fake estrogen. It stimulates the estrogen receptors. So as the estrogen receptors get stimulated, there is a pro-inflammatory reaction. Some of you recognize that pro-inflammatory reaction when you are overstimulated with estrogens, and you may get water retention. It looks like inflammation. You may have pain in certain parts of the body. Fibroids, a pro-inflammatory condition. We think fibroids and probably endometriosis are estrogen-stimulated, an estrogen-dominant condition in the body. So the estrogen is a pro-inflammatory. It keeps getting stimulated, and then that pro-inflammation then sets off a reaction toward the autoimmune diseases. T regulator cell dysfunction, we kind of talked about that earlier. What makes the decision, is this going to be a Th2 reaction or a Th1 reaction? Pro-inflammatory, lots of inflammation, or less inflammation or anti-inflammatory. That regulatory mechanism gets messed up, starts sending more and more to the Th1 side, more inflammation, the body gets overwhelmed, the antigen antibody complex, the antibodies trying to kill or attach to the cell, gets overwhelmed, the liver's supposed to get rid of it, can't get rid of it, it builds up in the liver, liver destruction, and then piece by piece the body starts breaking down, starts depositing these antigen or virus or toxic metals or something else along with an antibody in the joint. The body sets up a reaction to that abnormal tissue, sees the joint tissue as its enemy, and starts to attack it, and we just call that rheumatoid arthritis. The body starts to attack joint tissue. And that's part of what this next one is, bystander activation. The normal tissue's right next to the real tissue. Or the normal tissue's right next to the virus, or right next to the toxic metal, which is identified as the enemy. The body mounts the response, and mounts the response to two tissues. One is the normal tissue it's found in, the other is the virus. Then when the virus goes away, there's still a piece of that tissue, or the piece of the T cells that are attacking the normal tissue. And so that's how it happens. Overgeneralization of the immune system. So instead of the protein being specific, the T cells attacking this protein that's very specific, it attacks a protein that's a tiny bit different, but is actually part of our own body. And finally, the modification of a protein by a biochemical abnormality. There are some biochemistry. We call it phosphorylation because ATP, the P is phosphorus. ATP is our energy system. So it's phosphorylation that forms ATP. If the phosphorylation gets abnormal and the body starts putting this phosphorus in sites where it's not supposed to, the body may recognize that as foreign tissue. Or methyl groups, which is a carbon with 3 hydrogen groups. There are different groups that biochemically the body can actually put on a normal cell in our body that changes it just enough that the body sees it as the enemy and then sets up an immune reaction to it.